we usually do the first one like 15 minutes ago, but since the time change, it'll be like back to back.
With what?
Because Dhuhr doesn't start until.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So do one, you say salam.
Okay,
We do
so,
that.
yes, sounds good. Sounds good.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
حق لا إله إلا الله.
حقا لا إله إلا الله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Dear brothers, we bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his servant and messenger. Dear brothers, in the month of Ramadan, it is time to reflect on many things. And one of the things that I would like to reflect on is the overall trajectory of our lives and where we're going. As I talk, you reflect on yours as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ دَارَ الْآخِرَةِ. Use what Allah has given you for the purpose of achieving the hereafter, for the purpose of achieving the reward in the hereafter. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to invest what you have, to invest what's within your capabilities and resources for the purpose of reaching Dar al-Akhirah. And this got me thinking, well, how do we approach this problem? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to do this. وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ دَارَ الْآخِرَةِ. It's a project. I want to approach it as a project. And I approach it as a project by analyzing what those resources that we have that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. But in analyzing those resources, you have to identify those resources first. And the way to do that, I'd like to digress just a little bit with a little story that will help you understand how I'm approaching this. One time, a few years back, I was talking to a person, a very good person, mashallah, who has been very instrumental and involved in the relief effort in northern Syria during the Syrian civil war. And he was telling me about a school that needs to be renovated, and we have a sum of money, maybe like $20,000, and he asked me, what do you think is the first thing we should spend money on? And I was thinking, maybe a good curriculum, maybe support teachers. This was kind of thinking. And he shocked me by telling me, the first thing you should spend money on is repair the restrooms. And after a few minutes, after contemplating on what he was telling me, I realized how accurate that was. Because without it, it's not going to work. No matter how many good teachers you get and how many good curriculum you get, if you don't have working restrooms, it's not going to work. So with that in mind, I realized that this guy was approaching problems in a really foundational perspective. And I took that, I benefited from that encounter, and I adopted this issue about foundational perspective, because while we have things that we want to do in our lives, we have ideas. You want to plant a seed, and the seed is going to sprout, and it's going to grow, inshallah. Some people, it grows into a very large tree and gives fruit and to the community and to the others. And some, it never takes off. Why does it get smashed? If this is you, or if this is something you're suffering from, this will be for you. With that in mind, resources stem from, first of all, one basic idea. After that, I'm going to talk about 5 basic resources that each and every one of us have, that you need to have the right concept in order to invest those resources for the purpose of Akhirah, in order to fulfill Allah's commandments of approaching Akhirah, utilizing what you have. 5 resources start with one central point. The central point is good intention. They have the right motivation, good intention. I spoke about this before, and I will remind you and myself with one concept about that shouldn't escape the mind, and that is, when you decide on something, there is no downside. Why there is no downside? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not ask you about how much you accomplished. He will fix that for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fix the quantity. You worry about the quality, really good intention, really good motivation, and just purest of intentions. Have that pure intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fix the quantity. How is He going to fix the quantity? Well, He's going to multiply your deeds. That is all over the Quran. Times 7 here, times 10 there, times 700 here, and then sometimes even a multiplication without limits. So don't worry about the quantity. Now, once you have the right intention, once you have the pure motives, once you have that is clean, let's tap into those 5 resources. Let's tap into the 5 resources with a again, with a foundational approach. With a foundational approach, like that guy was approaching the school project by thinking, I want to fix the restroom first. All right. With that in mind, I think there's 5 resources that we need to fix our relationship to. Resource number 1, our relationship to money. Resource number 2, our relationship to time. Resource number 3, our relationship to health. Resource number 4, our relationship to knowledge. And resource number 5 is our relationship to the community. So what are your resources? Foundationally speaking, when you look at it from a foundational, basic starting point, you have money, you have time, you have health, you have knowledge, and you have people around you. Okay? Those are your basic resources. Let's start with money. What is the basic idea about money? And again, when we're talking about how to utilize those resources, I'm talking about a relationship we have with resources that is dysfunctional, that needs to be fixed. That's why we're reflecting during Ramadan. Relationship with those resources that is dysfunctional, that needs to be fixed, that is abusive, and you need to have the right idea in order to fix that relationship. So how do we fix our relationship with money, especially in this time and age? Everybody's squeezed for money. Everybody's snatching percentages out of your money here and there. And it's like you never have enough time to, or enough money left to do anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I will remind you and myself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ فَتَقْعُدَ مَلُومًا مَخْذُولًا. Don't be so tight and don't waste it. So I'm a physician. I like the physician analogy. I like the biological analogy. So I'm going to give you an analogy. An analogy is going to help you remember this. Okay? Money is like the circulatory system. It's like your heart and blood vessels pumping blood all over, right? Because money needs to jump from person A to person B to person C to person D and so on, and everybody is getting a transaction. Money is exchanging hands, services and goods are exchanging hands back, right? All right. Well, a healthy circulatory system, I'm going to tell you what are the two things that a circulatory system should not have. You shouldn't have hemorrhage. If you slice an artery, you're going to hemorrhage. And you shouldn't have clots. Clotting when blood is not flowing. Okay, so somewhere in the middle. Hope this analogy is useful. The other ideas you want to know is when the body is stressed, the circulatory system pumps more and more and more blood. But when the body is not stressed, the circulatory system is not working at its capacity. And that's a key point. That's a key point. You have to drive it home to fix your relationship with your money. You cannot live within your means. You have to live slightly below your means. Why? Because sometimes you're going to go through stressful situations where you're going to need to rev it up a little, right? So if you're living within your means, it would be an accomplishment because most people are actually living above their means, and that's a disaster. But I'm not going to talk about that because that is obviously wrong. You cannot live above your means because you're just going to fall in debt, simple as that. You're going to hit a wall at some point. But I'm talking about don't even live within your means. You got to live below your means. Live below your means to leave some cushion, to leave some room for special times, stressful, unaccounted circumstances. Get a hit from here, hit from there. So that's resource number one. Money. In order for you to be successful, because all of these resources have to come together for you to accomplish something. You see, you could have the right intention. And yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the quantity for you. You take care of the quality, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the quantity for you. But part of giving it your best shot, whatever that good project you want to do, whatever that manifestation or realization on the ground here in this earth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ, whatever that manifestation of that is here and now, part of giving it your best shot is actually giving it your best shot. And actually giving it your best shot need to have the right relationship with those 5 resources. All right, so resource number 1, money. Live below your means because you're going to need to have some fluctuations in that. Okay? So if you make $2,000, don't budget to spend $2,000. It's not going to work. Resource number 2, time. What's the right concept about time? I'm going to tell you what the right concept about time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in one word, He swore by it. Well, He swore by us. Why is that the right concept of time? Because time is very, very short. That's why He swore by it. Time is very, very short. Your time, my time, everybody's time is very, very short, like the last part of the day. Like literally squeezing the last few drops of the day. That is time. I'm going to reveal something for you. You don't have much time. None of us do. So what do you do when you don't have much time? How can you accomplish things? How can you organize it? Well, you organize it. You have to be organized. You have to have projects. And you have to have tasks. You have to have projects so the big picture points in the right direction. And you have to have tasks so you can step toward that big picture. Some of you may know vector calculus. It's a branch of math. A vector is an arrow that has a magnitude and a direction. There's a magnitude, those are the tasks. You keep pushing through, and a direction, that's the project. So if you want to remember one picture about time, remember vector. You have to have a vector. If you don't have a vector, you're just spinning. You're not going to go anywhere. And remember, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. By the Asr, by the last part of the day, you are at a loss. Humanity is at a loss. Except those, and he lists those. But by default, you are at a loss. Concept number 3, relationship number 3, health. We talked about that last Friday. Was it Friday or Saturday? I think it was Saturday. We talked about health. Health is very, very important. And it's not prioritized. But as a physician, I'm telling you something. Your world, your universe will shrink when you're sick. See, when you're in your 20s, full of energy, full of life, full of ambitions, man, let me tell you. And then one thing hits after another. And then before you know it, you are a full-time employed to the doctors. Go from place A to place B, and money, and meds. Your health is a very, very, very valuable resource. We talked about it a little bit. It starts with food. It starts with your relationship to food. I'm going to reveal another earth-shaking revelation for you. Do not, as a physician, do not depend on the health system to take care of your health. The health system does not take care of health. The health system takes care of disease. By the time you access the health system, you are already in trouble. What you need to focus on, the right concept, is before that, before you get in trouble. And when it comes to health, what better way to talk about health than Ramadan? Ramadan, you see. And not to repeat what I said on last Saturday, but very, very briefly, let me put it for you this way. If you violate the rules of health, just like if you violate the rules of society, you do time. Okay? If you violate the rules of health, and spoiler alert, 93% of us are doing that. But if you violate the rules of health, you have to do time outside your feeding window. You have to do time outside your feeding window. You have to do that time. You have to give the system a rest in order for the system to heal. And what is your feeding window? Your feeding window starts with the first bite of the day and ends 4 hours after the last bite of the day. It doesn't end with the last bite of the day, because there's still food. It needs to be digested, needs to be absorbed, and it needs to be stored. And that takes time. So what is your feeding window? Chronically, outside Ramadan. Well, we start with this really, really nice thing called breakfast, which is not really healthy for most of us. And it ends with maybe a late night snack at 10, maybe. So the non-feeding window, the fasting window starts when? If you last ate at 10, it starts at 2 a.m. And then you break it at 8. So you spend about 18 hours on average within feeding and 6 hours out. Not gonna work. Not gonna work. Not going to work. No matter what you do, what you say, not going to work. So what is Ramadan about? Is reminding you of that feeding window. It can be shrinking. You can do it. You can do it. And during the feeding window, you have to exercise discipline. Obviously, you can ruin a really, really good fast with 2 hours after it. Ruined. Gone. So, not going to spend too much time on this. We already talked about it. But I would like to remind you of what Prophet ﷺ said, among many other things he said in one particular hadith. He said, وَصِحَّتُكَ قَبْلَ سَقْمِكَ. Use your health before you lose it. All right. So now we talked about money. And the basic concept that fixes that abusive relationship is to live below your means. We talked about time and how short it is, and the basic concept to fix that relationship is to be organized. Remember the vector, have a project, and have steps toward that project. And we talked about health. And the basic concept to fix your relationship with your health is fasting. Is doing time outside your feeding window. And remember when the feeding window starts, first meal, first bite, And when the feeding window ends, 4 hours after the last bite. Resource number 4. Resource number 4 is knowledge. The knowledge, you can broadly categorize it into 2 different categories. You can put some more categories there. This is not necessarily comprehensive, but it's good enough. Al-haq, truth versus falsehood. Wal-khayr, and right versus wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about haq, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Do you actually think that people that know and people that don't know are the same? أَفَمَنْ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ الْحَقُّ كَمَنْ هُوَ أَعْمَى? No, they're not the same. Knowing the truth and not knowing the truth is not the same. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا. We gave him our signs. فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا. He backed off away from it. Look, in this verse, he's not just talking about someone who is struggling to know what's true, although that by itself is a category. He's also talking about somebody who, when you reach what the truth is, when you know what the truth is, are you going to follow through? Are you going to uphold it? Or are you going to back off? What did this guy do? فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا فَأَتْبَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ. He backed away from it, then he left himself vulnerable to the shayateen, فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ. And then he's lost cause. What else the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the kuffar around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said, فَإِنَّهُمْ لَا يُكَذِّبُونَكَ. They're not really disbelieving in you. وَلَكِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ يَجْحَدُونَ. That's what they want to do. So knowledge is important. Having the right knowledge is important, especially as Muslims, Muslim communities. We live in a world, there are many serious questions that need to be answered. Many serious questions that need to be answered in that category that we don't yet have a good answer to. Number 1, we should learn the Sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are Sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is how this life flows on this planet in the grand scheme of things. Number 2, we should really have, as an ummah, have a really good grasp of geopolitics. Because that is the arena where we work, where we, as a society, can't bypass that. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. Simple as that. Go down a little bit level. Political systems in our country. Yes, they're corrupt. Yes, they're really bad. Dictatorships here, dictatorship there. Revolutions here, revolutions there. But do we know how to rebuild a good political system? Do we have enough research in the matter? Do we have enough minds put to this? Is it important enough to allow those resources? That is part of haq. That is a resource. Etc., etc., etc. Then question of Palestine. What's the right approach to it? How are you going to do it? And then you brainstorm from there. If the right approach to it is that Muslim community in the United States, for example, needs to have their act together, then guess what? That is attached to that. Not only you reach that knowledge, but you follow through. But in this day and age, you have to understand when you're trying to get to the right information, there's a lot of distractions out there, still beginning with the media. So then that you venture then into the realm of epistemology, with how you know what's good and what's not. And even when you venture into the realm of epistemology, you realize that there's even layers after that. There's mediocre epistemology, and beyond that, you're going to have some better quality epistemology. But the idea is, if that vector is not pointing in the right direction, if you're not having the right project as a person, as an ummah, then guess what that vector is going to do again? Spin. And then the other side of knowledge is a khayr. Right versus wrong. And what is the best concept to remember when it comes to khayr, right versus wrong? The best concept to remember, that when you fix that relationship, it flows naturally to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen to what He said. Because if you're not there, you need to be there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, please move forward, brothers. Fill the gaps. Move forward, please. Move forward. Please fill the gaps. Leave some room for the other people joining us. All right. Khayr. Right versus wrong. You know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, to those He chooses, He says, وَحَبَّبَ إِلَيْهُمُ الْإِيمَانَ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. وَحَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانَ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. He made Iman beloved to you. And He made it decorated, shine in your heart. وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانَ. And He made you dislike the wrongful acts, the sinful acts, the wrongdoing. And from this comes a very simple test that each of us can ask ourselves. Privately. Privately. It's okay. Nobody needs to hear that answer. But let's ask it. Do you like sin? Do you like some kinds of sin versus other? Or is it repulsive to you? Or does it repulse you? Well, depending on how you answer the question, you know how you're going to score on that one. But there is a good score out there that you could reach. And that is the score when you love right, so it becomes natural. You don't need to work at it. And you hate wrong. It comes naturally, you don't work at it. That's resource number 4. Money, time, health, knowledge. Knowledge about right versus wrong, knowledge about truth versus false. Resource number 5. You're not alone, you're in a community. So is that community a resource for you? Of course it is. Why? Because your time is short. You can go away. Well, how do you tap into that resource? How do you tap into that community resource? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Cooperate. Concept number 1, how you fix that abusive relationship between you and the community. Cooperate. Not compete. Cooperate. You want a medical analogy for that so you can remember it? Do you know cells that are cooperating, what happens? You live a healthy life. And you know what a cell, when a cell decides that it's not going to cooperate and just going to do its thing and just divide and divide and divide, like it doesn't even see what's around it. You know what's that called in medicine? Cancer. That's called cancer. So community that people are not cooperating is plague community. وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان. Cooperate. But with cooperation, there's some clashing that's going to happen, and unavoidable. You know, Quran is not going to give you a rosy picture. Quran is teaching you reality. And what do you do for that clashing that happens? Well, he says, وَسَارِعُوا. The beginning of that verse, when he's going to tell you how to deal with clashing between community and disagreements and bad blood and not so pleasant feelings, before he tells you how to deal with it, he is reminding you of something very valuable. وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَّبِّكُمْ. Rush to the forgiveness of your Lord. وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ. And to a paradise as wide as the heavens. Wow. Must be some really serious request that's going to come after this reminder, right? It is reminding you of a paradise that is as wide as the universe. وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. The pious ones. Who are they? الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. Who spend that money? الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. PowerPoint. What do with this bad thing? They just deal with it. They suppress it. They don't lash out. كَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. Not only they don't lash out, because if you don't lash out and you suppress it, it's kind of still there, right? It didn't really go away. So what do you do to make it go away? You forgive. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Does it sound hard? Yeah, it is. You bet it is. But remember what he said in the beginning. That paradise, as wide as the universe. Is it worth it? Yeah. So fix your relationship with your community with cooperation. And remember forgiveness. And don't lash out. Not only that, we have to take it 2 steps, 1 step back and 1 step forward. We have to talk about the community that has passed and the community that is to come in order for our relationship with the community to be complete and comprehensive. Let's start with the community that passed. Okay, Well, we are here because of what generations and centuries ago people have done. But what do we do for this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّ اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ. Forgive us and forgive those who have been before us, who are believers before us. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Don't have bad feelings in our heart toward them. We love them, no matter what happened, no matter what they did, no matter how we got here. We love them, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgiveness for them and forgiveness for us. But at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to fix things. You know, if let's say, example of politics, if politically we didn't do good in the last 200 years, doesn't mean that we repeat the same scenario. For example, so you renovate, you fix things, you innovate. And on that topic, how you fix relationship with the people to come, our children, grandchildren, and their grandchildren. Well, I'm sure you want to leave a better world for them. I'm sure you don't want them to deal with the same things we're dealing with. And this is a problem for the Muslim community here in the United States, first and foremost. You know, I left Syria because there was an oppressive, corrupt, murderous regime there. And it's so ironic that when that regime falls in Syria, Damascus, out of all places, people are free. Yes, they're hungry. Yes, they're poor. Yes, they don't have any resources, but they're free. It's so ironic that they're free and able to talk. And here in the United States, we cannot. We are afraid. How ironic is that? You know, if you told me this 20 or 30 years ago, I would have laughed. So I'm asking you, as a Muslim community, what kind of world in this country you want your kids to live in? Because you're just not going to pick up your stuff and go. So what kind? Fear? Go to the Middle East. There's plenty of that. All right, to wrap it up in 1 minute. Remember, money, live below your means. Leave some room for some unaccounted for situations. Time, have a plan, have a project, have some steps toward that project. Have a vector. Health, well, there's no way around it. You're gonna have to do time. Time where? Outside your heating window. There is no way around it. There is no way around it. No matter what your mind is telling you right now. And all those diets that are good for you, by the way, they are good for you for one reason. Because the hormonal profile in the body of those diets is an approximation of the hormonal profile of fasting. By the way. Knowledge. Truth. Not only to reach the truth, but to follow through on the truth. Because sometimes it's going to cost you to follow through it. To say it, to know what is true and to say what is true are two different things. And al-khayr, right versus wrong. If it doesn't flow naturally, you have some work to do. If it doesn't come straight away without any thinking, without any effort, you have some work to do. And community, cooperation, not cancer. And forgiveness. And we leave a better world than the one we are in for the people to come. Alhamdulillah, salatu salam ala Rasulillah. Dear brothers, we have some announcements. There is brother, what is that first name? Abdul Samad. Brother Abdul Samad in the hospital is sick. Generally, as a physician, we don't give diagnosis, but this is already written. It's illegal for us to say that, but in any case, he is sick. We wish him, inshallah, forgiveness. Please keep him in your prayers. We have also 2 more announcements. Brother Ibrahim Khan has passed. We wish him forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We Allahumma اغفر له واغفر لي اغفر له خطاياه ونقي من خطاياه كما ينقى الثوب الابيض من الدنس، واغفر لنا اذا صرنا الى ما صاروا اليه. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give his family patience, sabr, and the thawab of a sabr. Also, there is ICNA relief is in the lobby. Please see Sister Jamila in the lobby for more on that topic. اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معاصيك، ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك، ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا، ومتعنا اللهم باسماعنا وابصارنا وقوتنا ما احييتنا واجعله الوارث منا. واجعل ثارنا على من ظلمنا وانصرنا على من عادانا، ولا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا، ولا تجعل الدنيا اكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا. قل قولي هذا استغفر الله العظيم وقم الصلاه.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استولى الصلاة يرحمكم الله. استوى لا تختلفوا. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. زين للناس حب الشهوات من النساء والبنين والقناطير المقنطرة من الذهب والفضة والخيل المسومة والأنعام والحرث ذلك متاع الحياة الدنيا والله عنده حسن المآب. قل أنبئكم بخير من ذلكم للذين اتقوا عند ربهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وأزواج مطهرة ورضوان من الله والله بصير بالعباد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الذين يقولون ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. الصابرين والصادقين والقانتين والمنفقين والمستغفرين بالأسحار. شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط. لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Just to mention quickly, we have new sisters, new Muslim sisters halaqah every Monday, and new Muslim brothers halaqah every Tuesday. So if you are interested in one of those programs, or even if you know someone who you've been talking to about Islam, we have some outreach that we can do. Have somebody give them a call and talk to them a little more about Islam and invite them into the community. Talk to either myself or Brother Abdullah or Imam Kayal, inshallah.